these games are like 20 bucks each. So, you know, if you want to be weeb and just fucking buy a bunch of fucking anime games, like light novel games, well fucking do it then. Send your money to charity. Anyways, okay. So this game is called Ame no Marginaru. Right? Ame no Marginaru. Yeah, so Rain Marginal. As it says right here. No. This is how I know. Everything has an end. I don't know what the story's about. Steam gave it like some good ratings. That's not what I wanted. What is going on here? Okay. Yeah, it has like it's positive, you know, very positive. Okay. You can count 2014. Jesus Christ. All right, I'm gonna set this up real quick. Just make sure this is like right. I don't make any more money. It says I'm offline. Oh, wait, event. Live now, okay. No, not what I wanted. Live control room. Yeah, 1 minute and 11 seconds, okay. This is literally all I wanted is the timer. I'm gonna check it later. Okay, so back to fucking full screen. And let's start, I guess. Yeah, Ame no Marginaru. Everything has an end. Rain Marginal. Okay. What the fuck was this? Did I just I just clicked on the wrong thing? Oh, prologue. I didn't see that. Oh my god, dude. Rain. Falling from a white sky, small drops of water, raindrops. This sky had, for all this time, never once cleared. The sun during the day, the moon at night, neither had ever shown their faces. Yesterday, a few days before, a few years before, it had always been rainy. And surely tomorrow, the day after, a year later, it will also be rainy. Something that would never stop. An endless rain. Fuck, dude, send this fucking rain to California, man. We're in a fucking drought. In the midst of that, I put my feet into the river like I always did. It wasn't particularly cold. The water only came up to my ankles or knees. So there was no chance of drowning. Even if you drowned, you wouldn't die from it. Even if you drowned, you wouldn't die from it. Even if you drowned, you wouldn't die from it. Let that sink in for a second. If you drowned, you would not die from it. And this flow, there wasn't a place where it started, nor was there a shore downriver. In all directions, it was all horizon. It was a river with no end. My aim was far downriver. My destination was there. Before getting to that place would take many, many years, but now I can reach it in an instant. Soon, I reached my destination. In the middle of the river, a large pit opened, making a roaring sound. A roaring sound. It swallowed the things that had wandered into this world. Most likely, it was there to return things to the real world. I think this place was the exit from this world. I had no proof, sadly. There was no way to find out, and I had long lost the will to try. However, this... Oh. Press the wrong button. However, only this place was. It was the only place in this world that connected to the outside world. That person seems to be doing well. Visible faintly within the hole was the image of that person. It seemed that he had lost his memory of this place and had returned to his daily life without trouble. Even if he were to forget about me, to me he was the only proof of my existence. I could leave in this real world, no much better than leaving only tears. Why the fuck this kept popping up on the fucking bottom part? Let this memory be my nourishment for eternity. Ameno Majinaru. Everything has an end. Monday, prologue. How long is this game? Jesus. Burning sunlight in the voices of cicadas? Cicadas? I don't know how to pronounce. Even though it was early morning, the sky after the end of the rainy season was almost tragically clear. Oh my god. No. Today was Monday. The time was 5:47 a.m. and 20 seconds. The beginning of the most depressing day of the week. Hey! Hang on. I can't take it off. I had long hated Mondays and that remained unchanged even after becoming a working adult. That was why every Monday I went to the office earlier than anyone else, every week. Inside the swaying train car, as it started getting hot, I headed to the office on the first train of the day. Even though it was before 6, it already seemed like it was going to be another midsummer day going against my feelings. Getting off the train and walking along a typical station front street for 5 minutes, I soon could see a mixed-use building. When I arrived, I got in the elevator. The company I work for is on the 4th floor. As the heavy door closes, I pressed the button for my destination. I pressed the button for the 7th floor. My destination wasn't the 4th floor of my workplace, but the highest floor. Ding! A strong wind blew on the bare rooftop. The morning air was a bit chilly. On the other side of the high precautionary fence was a perfectly clear summer sky from the end of the rainy season. Despite it being early morning, I was soaked in sweat. Well, shall we go? Saying that to myself, I started walking towards the edge of the roof. That's right, no matter how much you ran, jumped or rolled here, you would never fall from the roof. You could call it a safe zone. A fence that prevented falling, prevented suicide, devoted itself to defending against that. Saying, I won't let you die. However, as if defying that fence service, I put my hands on that metal wire and climbed. I finished climbing the fence, accompanied well, I can't say that word. Accompanied by its rattling sound, and put my feet on the mere 30 centimeter worth of space on the other side. Obviously, this meant there was nothing in my way, and at this point, I was no longer within the safe zone. Forget about running. If I so much as lost my balance slightly, I would easily fall to the ground. If I jumped from here, I'd definitely die. Falling from the 7th floor, it was only natural to die. Anyone who could survive that could only be counted as lucky. Sadly, my luck was only that of an average person. So, well, it was almost certain I'd die. Just one more step. Simply stepping forward. With just that, everything would end. The job I hated, the depressing Monday, I'd be free from them. But I couldn't do it. The reason being, it wasn't as if I wanted to die. Then I should turn right around and return to the safety within the fence, right? But there too was hesitation. Because even though I did not want to die, I also did not want to live. It'd be wrong to say that they were the same. To want to die and to not want to live. They were not the same. Similar, but not equal. Even if I were tired of living, I hadn't yet lived long enough to want to die. It was simply that there were mostly painful things, sad things, and living had become stained with distaste. While I was a student, things were still fine. Even if there were bad things or painful things, I could see what the causes were. No matter how much it bothered me, if I knew the cause, then I just had to overcome it. Even if I couldn't overcome it, there was hope. Maybe someday I could even look forward. But now that I was an adult, things were different. There weren't clear causes or reasons. There weren't too many things where no one or nothing was at fault. I learned that this world, that reality, was full of things that can't be helped. Those small pains would, like body blows in boxing, slowly, steadily build up. Phew. I guess it's enough. With a light exhale, I once again started climbing the fence. I looked at my watch. It was 6:50 a.m., around the time that people would start coming. Without wanting to die, but climbing the fence like this, an observer would probably think that it was a meaningless act. However, to me, there was a little bit of meaning. To put it in words, it was insurance for the heart. If I came here wanting to die, I could do it anytime. A way to reconfirm that, and a way to retain my heart's peace. It wasn't a ritual to let out the damage accumulated from the numerous body blows during the day, because I was KO'd. Done with the dreariest day, Monday. Using every trick I knew, this was how I managed to keep on living. More than likely, I'd keep on living like this for a long time. One day, someone would do something about it, and if they can't, then they can't kill me right now. I knew that this kind of thinking was a sweet illusion that only kids are allowed to have. But even so, I somehow found myself being passive. As I became an adult, the real world became more and more hollow. As I gained experience XP points? Really? Experience. Okay. Because becoming used to things in numbness killed the freshness and strong emotions. Originally, time was supposed to be fair to all, but it was getting thinner. I'm not really sure myself, whether this was a wish or a complaint, a prayer or a curse. I wasn't even sure why these words were directed to. There was just one thing that was clear. As you can see, I'm a fool. Well, fuck. Rin or elevator? Who the fuck is Rin? What should we do, guys? No one's here. No one's here to tell me. Fucking Rin. Or, I don't know if it says run. Rin. Okay.
あれからどれだけの時間が経っただろうか。もう今ではしっかりと思い。
You fucking pressed the wrong button. No, we were raised in a house of priestesses. A branch of noble house that sent unmarried daughters to the shrine. Of course, noble didn't mean the royal shrines like Isonokami or Ise. It was a local shrine under a small unknown priest. From before I can remember, my older sister and I were adopted and were raised as priestesses in training. So I didn't know any details. I didn't know my birthday, nor who my real parents were. It was also a mystery when and for what purpose we were sent to the shrine to be raised as priestesses. But we didn't think about those questions. We were never worried and never felt any dissatisfaction about it. It was a world where unless you struggled to live, you died. In that kind of world, we didn't starve nor freeze and were able to safely live our lives without event. Plus, in my case, I had a kind older sister.
ねえお姉ちゃん。
In the season of long rains, it was a rare clear night. In a break between those damp clouds, the big face of the moon peeked out.
やだな。この梅雨が終わったらまた暑くなってくるね。
Without thinking, the words tumbled from my lips. At those words, my sister shook her head and easily moved both her hands. Eh? It's summer, so there's no helping it. Nod. Once again, nodding, she moved her hands while moving her mouth.
そうだね。暑いのは嫌だけど、夏祭りとかあるもんね。
Nodding, she happily patted me on the head. Yes, it will be fun, won't it? That's what I think she said. Even if her voice didn't make a sound, I could read her lips. I could understand from her expression. Even if no one else could understand, as her sister, I alone could. A sister older than me by 10 years. The only relative that I had, someone very dear to me. Always gentle and cheerful. Even the smallest part of her that was absent-minded was charming. At all times, she had on a peaceful smile that never broke. However, She wouldn't speak, nor that she not that she couldn't, she wouldn't. Of course, in the beginning, I had thought my sister was unable to speak. Like how the blind had eyes that couldn't see, I thought she was unable to form a voice. However, just recently I had been taught that that was incorrect. For 333 years, 3 months and 3 days, you could not speak aloud. What? 333 years, 3 months and 3 days, you could not speak aloud. That was what I was told. My sister was, as the priestess said, bearing that task. Apparently the shrine had made some prayer that created a debt that had been over 100 years earlier. Obviously, the one they created that with was a god, I imagine. I didn't know the details, but I was taught that in order to repay the debt, a kind of atonement was required. I had thought that priestesses were just stand-ins for gods, but I learned that they can also be burdened with the role of being sacrifices. And I could understand the reasoning, but wasn't satisfied. No matter how you looked at it, 330 years was too long. Obviously, it wasn't something a single person's life could cover. Even if my sister spent her entire life, it wouldn't be enough years. Even a child like myself could see that. And that wasn't the end of the requirements. The kanji for meals was set to be once every day, as the cleansed medium uttering earthly words were forbidden. In the name of the purification, cold water ablution? Yeah, I think so. Were performed every day, all year without rest, even in the during of the winter snows. Just what kind of debt this was exactly, I didn't know, and also didn't care. It was a debt that we never recall making. Thinking about it now, it was a pretty idiotic thing. However, it was all perfectly natural for that time. Just questioning them themselves was punished. And I was taught that my sister existed solely for that reason. 1 month later, the moon floated in the sky. From between a break in the rainy season clouds, its large face peered through. That night, my sister was gazing at the moon with somewhat happy expression. It looked almost as if she had accepted her own fate. That just was so sad. The words just came from my mouth without thought. Damn it.
ねえお姉ちゃん、逃げようか。
The words were half a joke, but also half for real.
だってここにいたんじゃお姉ちゃんが。ね。だから二人でどこか遠くに行こうよ。
Even at my words, she just cast her eyes down a tiny bit, and soon, with her usual cheerful face, she shook her head.
ここが気に入ってる。それよりも早く寝ましょうって。って引っ張らないでよ。
Walking ahead of me, my sister happily returned to the room, and then simply laying down on the floor, she quickly fell asleep. It was almost amazing how quickly she fell asleep. But in contrast to that charming sleeping figure, my eyes were pulled to the white silk cloth wrapped around her mouth. To make sure that she wouldn't speak while sleeping, she would, of her own will, and completely naturally do that to herself. Watching that was just impossibly painful. That act, I can't understand it now. I'm sure that my sister must have felt some kind of duty or responsibility as a priestess. As someone who was wed to God, there were probably those who believed in her. But in equal amount, there was also concern for me. Originally, we had come to be adopted by the shrine without any support. If the two of us were to flee, it was obvious that we would have gotten lost. With a child like myself in tow, it would have been all the more difficult. Mean. mean. Burning sunlight and the cries of cicadas? Cicada? I don't know. A scene you could see everywhere in summer. The noisy cicadas were erasing all sounds. Perhaps, maybe now, when that occurred to me, I spoke to my sister.
ねえお姉ちゃん、今だったら喋っても大丈夫だよ。
In the middle of the chorus of cicadas, my sister looked at me without moving. I moved my mouth closer to my sister's face. Like this, if you speak softly, no one should be able to hear. Just once, I wanted to hear my sister's voice. Since before I could remember, I had always been with her, but I never knew what kind of voice she had. I was sure that it would be a cheerful, cute voice, just like her demeanor, gentle and soft, nothing like my low, unrefined way of
ほ
speaking.
ら、今なら誰もいないから大丈夫だって。
Even with my continued pushing, my sister remained silent. Finally, with her eyes downcasted, she shook her head and moved her mouth.
誰もいないことはないって。
There's never a time when no one is around. With a small nod, she pointed to the red Tory archers on the ground. Then her hand waved no in front of her face. Essentially, she was saying God was watching. From the beginning to the end, my sister was always like that. Every day, thinking that she'd be hungry, eating no more than a tiny bit of porridge. I would secretly offer her food, but she would never once accepted. And she wasn't just strict with herself. She often corrected my way of speaking.
ねえお姉ちゃん、あの塔だけど。あいた。ごめんなさい。荒らぎだけど。
As I was carelessly about to speak a taboo, she quickly hid my hand. Even though my sister only rarely got mad, she would strictly correct me about impure or taboo things. Unlike my young self, who didn't really understand anything, my sister probably was a very fervent believer of Shinto. For example, even if she were the sacrifice for atonement, I believe my sister was undoubtedly also a priestess in service of God. At every time, every place, whatever you did, God was always watching from nearby. That was probably what my sister thought, or perhaps what she wanted to believe. The following year, late autumn, when the red stained leaves on the tree began to fall and when a cold wind was beginning to blow, around when I was about to turn 10, unlike myself, who had grown up without any real major illnesses, whenever it came to be this time of year, my sister would lie down on the floor more often. Of course, saying that she lay on the floor didn't mean it happened suddenly one day. At first, she was only down once a month, but then it became 3 days, then 5, and before I knew it, she spent almost half a month laying down. In the middle of that, while making the strained face, my sister would get up early from bed. Her destination was the well in the rear grounds. It was the daily task of the purification, the cold water ablution.
大丈夫お姉ちゃん。
When I would run over to her saying that, she would tell me not to worry by gesturing with her body and hands. While wearing her usual gentle smile, she still never once spoke. The late autumn morning air already felt cold to the skin, and steam was rising from her body, just bathed in cold water. Her breath was also brilliant white, her body numb from the cold and shivering slightly, and she'd already been sick without all of this. But if you thought about it, it wasn't a surprise. Without being given proper meals and living this way for many years, anyone's body would break. Even if it weren't my sisters, they would clearly be succumbing to sickness. And with that figure before me, I again wound up asking the question I've asked countless times.
ねえお姉ちゃん、ここから逃げようか。だってこのままじゃいつかお姉ちゃん死んじゃうよ。
There wasn't any particular response. Of course, I wasn't expecting that she would use her voice to reply, but she neither nodded her head up and down nor shook it from side to side to say no. She just, while looking downward, shivered in the cold. I'm sure that my sister herself really knew that if she continued living like this, sooner or later she would break down from sickness. Even if she were to become... Oh, what the fuck? Even if she were to become healthy now, without a doubt, it would happen sometimes in the future.
だって例の職は333年なんだよね。それって一生って意味だよ。
Indeed, from the start it had been forced to be much longer than a single human life. Even if my sister were to keep that contract until she died, she would never fulfill it. A child like me could understand that, and yet it was impossible for my more intelligent sister to grasp.
だから一緒に逃げようよ。ひもじい思いをしてもこんなところにいるよりはずっといいって。
But at my words, she shook her head slightly and pointed at the torii. Just like she had previously done, she was indicating that God was
もうお
watching.
姉ちゃんたら 神様だって見てないよ。第一、神様なんて本当にいるかどうかも怪しいのに。
That was how I really felt. As someone who was in service to God, I might be a failure, but I have never seen him nor heard his voice. To me, his existence only served to torment my
だからお
sister.
姉ちゃん大丈夫だって。誰にも見つからないうちに早くここから逃げよ
A dry sound reverberated right as I spoke. Of course, that sound was my cheek being slapped, and none other than my sister did the slapping.
う。お姉ちゃん。
There was no pain. More than anything, there was surprise. My usually very kind and calm sister was, for the first time ever, showing me a very strict face. She wasn't angry that I had suggested that we ran away. It was because I had questioned the existence of the gods. I'm sure that my sister believed in them from the bottom of her heart, as a priestess in service to God, as well as one who took on the duties of such. And if one were to deny that, then it would be denying one's own reason for existing. That's why I think my sister believed. No, wanted to believe. Next month. Around when the leaves on the tree fell and in exchange white fell from the sky. As always, the days my sister spent laying down continued. Before she'd been lying down for half the months, but as if in sync with the coming of winter, she now seemed to be lying down all the time. Immediately after finishing the morning cold water ablution, right? She would almost collapse to the floor and just sleep. And then one day, a young footman I was friends with secretly told me my sister probably couldn't be saved. He also added that she probably wouldn't not even make it to spring. We were 10 years apart, so she would have only just turned 20. But it seemed that my sister was going to die. I was very sad when I heard this, but I wasn't very surprised. I'm sure that somewhere in my heart I had calmly accepted that the time had come. I knew that if she continued to live like this, sooner or later it would happen. But if sister were to die, then what would happen to me? Even though since as far back as I can remember, I was brought up to be a priestess just like her. For some reason, I had never been once taught anything about things like rituals. Since I was only 10, maybe it was something I would be taught in the future. But right now, other than being my sister's younger sister, I was of no value. And then one day, I was called to the main shrine, not with my sister, alone.
失礼します、宮司様。
Lowering my head exaggeratedly deep, I bowed to the person sitting in the center. He was the head priest, the highest ranking person at the shrine, and someone I almost never met. Up until now, I had only met him while hiding behind my sister's back, so I was extremely nervous. By the way, how is it doing? It doesn't seem to be faring well.
はい。
I had raised my head but kept my eyes lowered while answering. The it that the head priestess spoke was my sister. And by the way, he would only refer to me as girl. In terms of standing, we were considered priestesses, so we had never been treated rudely. But even so, we weren't treated properly as humans. You know of this girl? It seems it can't be saved.
はい。ネギ様からもそのように聞かされております。
As expected, it didn't last long either. I remember that word catching me. The word indicated more than one, not your sister, but your sister also. Before I could think about what that meant, the head priestess continued to speak. This is why, while there is time, I order that you will take over.
引き継ぎとは。
Yes, when it dies, you as the sister will take over the duty. At first, I couldn't understand what the head priest was saying. Take over the duty? Me? But then I soon realized he was saying that I, too, will have my words sealed away. Live on one bowl of porridge a day, chill my body as the 333-year sacrifice for atonement. Hey, what is that surprised face? With just one human, there was no way to atone for 300 years.
もしかして私はそのために。
Of course, using many people like this is the only way to deal with it. He answered without hesitation. There wasn't one hint of change in his voice of expression. It was as if he were blandly explaining something extremely obvious, and indirectly he told me that I was a spare replacement for my sister. And by the way, your sister was the third. You would be the fourth. With you, we can get the remaining numbers of years down quite a bit.
残り年数とは
Your sister only lasted about 15 years, but there are about 200 years left. With that, the head priest's expression softened just the tiniest bit. It was the first time I've seen that sort of expression on his face since I come here. To be honest, there's not much change being told that the 200 years remain. At the least, if it were impossible even using my entire life, then it was all the same to me. In any case, once it dies, you, girl, will take over. Understood? Hey, where's your answer?
ですが宮司様
I don't want to hear you whining. I asked if you understood. I silently gave a small nod. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. Even if I said I didn't want to, I understood enough to know it wasn't going to be allowed. And yet, looking at me silently nodding, good, like just now, you should be practicing not making a sound. Understood? When I once again silently nodded at those words, the head priest wore a satisfied smile. When I left the main shrine, I was thinking many things. I just couldn't bring all my thoughts together. The head priest's words were probably correct, even if I didn't think that 333 years could be covered by a single person. If they weren't a supernatural being or a holy man, it was natural that a person could only live about 100 years. But I hadn't thought of wearing it down with a number of priestesses like this. To go that far, just what could have been this debt to God? To be honest, I couldn't imagine it, nor was I interested. All I understood was, if my sister dies, then I would be the one who had to take up being the sacrifice of atonement for the remaining 200 years. Obviously, if I spent my entire life, it wouldn't be enough. By chance, I looked up. The sky was gray as lead. It was such a striking sight. That winter icy sky seemed to be filled with gray as far as you can see. That night, my sister was lying down with a silk cloth wrapped around her mouth. As always, she continued with this, her way to keep from accidentally making a sound while coughing. Facing her like that, I told her about today's events, that her sickness probably couldn't be cured, that I was her spare, and I would be taking it up after her.
お姉ちゃんどうやら私も声が出せなくなるみたい
Oh my god, I just got something stuck in my throat.
なんでも残り200年ほどなんだって
My sister probably couldn't be saved, and it had been decided that I would follow her after her. The exhausted figure of my sister would be mine for a few years later.
ねえお姉ちゃん最後にもう一度だけ聞くけどここから逃げよう
I didn't say it in the light-hearted, partly joking way that I used to up until now. I said them because I really wanted to flee from
別
here.
に神様が見てたって構わないからこんなところでこんなことのために死んじゃうなんて馬鹿らしいよ
Even if my sister couldn't be saved, even if this had all been done out of consideration for me, the life that I obtained from all of that, at this point, its future had become
この
worthless.
ままじゃお姉ちゃんの一生は何のためにあったのかわからないよだから逃げよう
Even at those words, my sister remained silent, looking down. Eventually, she slowly shook her head and closed her eyes. No matter what I said to her after, she didn't face me. Sis, does this mean you accepted your fate? With a silk cloth wrapped around her mouth, even on her deathbed, that duty, the sacrifice of her atonement, was what she continued to fulfill. For a debt or a loan we don't even recall making to some god or whatever, she never opened her mouth or used her voice for me. Even now, I had never heard my sister's voice, and just maybe it might all end before I ever hear it. A premonition that I didn't want to come to pass for some reason felt like it wouldn't miss. Next month, the harsh winter came in full force. For the first time in a while, it was a night where the large moon showed its face. The cramped sleeping room that my sister and I alone used. We weren't sleeping there. We were sleeping there as always, when suddenly they came. With a sharp clack, the sliding door opened forcefully. Beyond was a priest and a head priest, along with a number of footmen that I recognized.
こんな夜更けにどうされたのですか？
It was so sudden I had no idea what was going on. For it to be so late at night and had many people come in one after another, it was honestly more scary
あ
than
の宮
surprising.
司様、これは一体
To prevent any accident, we come to take precautions.
手違い。
Before I can even ask what this was, a cloth was placed in my mouth. Then, almost like a gag, it was firmly tightened. With this, she won't be able to speak. She might make a sound suddenly, after all. The priest muttered that while I was unable to understand what was happening, that what then leaped at my eyes was... What, sis? Before me was my sister with her mouth gagged even more tightly than mine. Moreover, pressed to her neck was a blade of a tanto, ready to tear into my sister's neck. There might be some time before she dies, but we want to make sure of the transfer, you see. Saying that, the head priest looked at the footman holding the tanto. It was then that I finally understood the situation. They're going to kill my sister. On top of that, from that instance that I would become the next sacrifice, they wanted to prevent the chances that I could use my voice. If it happened that suddenly, in a place with no one around, she were to die of her illness, there was a possibility that I would raise my voice in crying. They probably feared that. I believe you were God Rin. I'll at least say my thanks for being the sacrifice for 15 whole years. Just saying that, he glanced at the footman holding my sister and the tanto. Please, please don't, please stop. Don't kill my sister. Even when I tried to use my voice, I couldn't form words. That's why I screamed in my heart. There was nothing else I could do. My body was held firmly, so I couldn't even run close to her. It was the only thing I could do. And my sister was looking at me, with a blade pressed to her wasted body, neither able to move nor to use her voice. She pleaded with her eyes. Help me. She said that. Even if she hadn't voiced it, my eyes told her. Her eyes told me. Up until now, someone who served as a priestess risked her entire life to be the sacrifice for atonement. Believed in God, without question, sacrificing herself. The person who endlessly smiled never broke. For the first time, she pleaded for the first time. She beseeched that God for salvation. At that time, I had a thought. If right now she weren't saved here, then there was no God. I know nothing about debts or loans, don't care about atonement or sacrifice. Anyone owed those things never existed to begin with. If it was something that refused to save her right now, it was not a God. And so there is no God, and that's what I realized. Now do it. Calmly. Succinctly? What? That was all the head priest said. Just as he finished saying those words, a sort of wet spraying sound rang out. It was like the sound of water, except that this wasn't water, but blood. It was the sound of that spraying out from her neck. The color wasn't red, but the same black as the darkness. Unable to speak, I screamed in my heart. In front of me, as I was held firmly and unable to run to her side, my sister became soaked in strongly flowing blood. My sister was looking at me, a black stain spreading over her without any apparent resistance, trying to convey something to me. With the only part of her that wasn't bound, her eyes, she gazed at me, and then like a thread holding her up was cut, she collapsed forward. And just that easily, she died. I didn't know what my sister was trying to tell me in the end, but it seemed that there wasn't a God. And so I lost my voice. I was stopped from forming words. In the end, I never once heard my sister's voice. The final time I used my voice was to the head priest when I said accidents. When thinking that those were the last words of my life, despite myself, I felt it was pathetic. And as the fourth sacrifice, I took up the remaining 200 plus years of atonement to pay back a debt to something that didn't exist. My life also died right here. Early spring. After those events, a few months passed and the north wind finally started to soften. In that chilly early morning, I was continuing the daily task of morning cold water ablutions. With my mouth closed, I coughed like I was choking. Unlike my sister, I always had a cloth wrapped around, no, forced around my mouth. The only time I could remove it was to eat, and then there was also a footman next to me watching. Apparently, unlike with my sister, I wasn't trusted. That was probably obvious since I had nothing I needed to protect. They seemed afraid that I might despair at everything and suddenly raise my voice. Should I just do that? They weren't omnipotent? If I suddenly, in the middle of eating, raised my voice, they probably couldn't stop me. Again and again, I pushed back that impulse. One reason was because without a doubt, I would be killed. They placed the duty of atonement above all else. For that task, they did not even think of us as sacrifices as humans. I was sure that I would be subjected to unimaginably cruel reprisal before being killed. And one other reason was my sister. If I were to throw it all away, the past 100 years would have been started from the beginning. If that happened, then all my sister's actions would have become nothing. Even if it weren't for a stupid thing, I would lose sight of just what my sister lived her life for all these years. So this wasn't for the head priest, nor the shrine, nor myself, and certainly not for some god. It was for my sister that was throwing away my own life, resolving to live as a sacrifice. I had yet to turn 11. It was a young, ignorant, powerless person's own kind of determination. The season where the sanities loudly called and the heat returned. Today I also finished my daily duty and was lying down in my bedroom. Perhaps my determination to live on as a sacrifice was finally understood, since there wasn't anyone on my side constantly watching over me. But knowing them, they're probably not at ease with just this. From what I've heard, they were bringing someone in from somewhere else. Of course, a spare mine. While I was still healthy right now, that didn't mean I would be forever. They certainly knew that well. Even if it weren't my sister, continuing to live this way made it obvious. From my age, I had become thinner. Looking at my own young body, that's what I felt. That night, I quietly had my eyes closed and was about to fall into light sleep. Focusing on my ears, I didn't hear things but people's voices. Even though it was late at night, there seemed to be the sound of shouting and screaming. Sensing that something wasn't right, I got up. The voices were still far away, but without a doubt, they were coming from within the shrine. So I put my hand on the sliding door to take a look outside the bedroom. When before I could open it myself, it slammed open. Quick, run, quickly! The first thing that familiar young footman said upon entering. However, contrary to how he usually appeared, his breathing was ragged and he was very agitated. He was also wearing brightly red clothing. Just what had happened? Gesturing with my hands and the whole body, I asked him. Just go quickly, they're raising the place. Anyone found is being killed. No, they'd make sure to kill you. Saying that, the footman pointed to the rear garden. Looking closer, I can see that the red on him was his own blood. I saw that there was also various cuts on parts of his clothing and body. It's over for the shrine. With those words, he finally fell face down on the floor. Just what should I do? The faraway screams I heard just before they were now very close. I don't know what was going on, but I had to get out of here. Well, looking at the main man who apparently had died before me, that's what I thought. I ran straight from the rear garden into the mountains. I didn't turn around to look. I was so afraid I didn't dare turn around. Running as fast as I could, the cloth bound around my mouth to keep me from speaking added to my difficulty breathing. But I didn't move to remove it. That was because I had no idea what the situation was right now. Eventually, hiding myself along a small path in the forest, I slowly caught my breath. And then fearfully, I looked back at the place I had run from. Burning. Is that the shrine that's burning? Behind me, the area where the shrine stood was glowing bright red in the darkness. There was no reason to believe it was anything other than a fire. Then what happened to all the other people? Or is it like the footman said, everyone was killed? There wasn't much need to think about it. Most likely it was true. While running through the rear garden, I remember hearing a number of familiar voices changing to screams. The head priest, lower priests, all the other priestesses, the many footmen that came from the court. I had heard that despite being a small shrine, it had a historical significance. Did such place get raised like this all of a sudden? No matter how much I thought, I couldn't find a reason. There was much more bigger problems. What should I do? Could it be that with the shrine gone, I had been released from the role of being the sacrifice for atonement? Or was it that so long that as long as this world existed, I had a duty to continue it? I just didn't know. However, I understood that if I were found, I would be killed. I started moving the feet that had stopped on the forest path deeper into the forest. I didn't know just how far that child's feet could continue running, but there was nothing I could do. Half a year later, late autumn, deep on a mountain around when the red stained leaves on the tree were started to drop and the weather was slowly changing to winter. Living here and hiding, a few months passed before I noticed. There were days pieced together with wild plants and fish from a stream. Of course, I had thought about going down to the village a number of times, thought about it, but I would get scared and wouldn't be unable to leave the mountains. There might be someone on watch. The people who had attacked the shrine might just be simple robbers in the night. I think that was the most likely case, but people who would burn down the holy shrine might be someone with greater influence. If that were true, I couldn't be careless and get myself found. Normally, the footmen were probably from the imperial court and had no connection to the shrine. But despite that, they were also killed, so I thought they would let a priestess associated with the shrine go, even if it were a young child. But while I thought about that, there was also another reason. Actually, this one was even bigger. If I go to the village, what would happen to me? A failed priestess with no skills, someone who was nothing more than a sacrifice. Did I have a way to live? With those doubts gathered together, I just couldn't find the courage to leave the mountains. And yet, even now, I didn't use my voice. Every day I had cold water, ablutions, continued my duties of atonement. To be honest, not even I knew the reason why. Even though I didn't have a sister I could rely on now, and that head priest that I disliked wasn't here. And moreover, even if I spent my entire life continuing on, there wouldn't be anyone to come after. With even the shrine now gone, it was all meaningless. 2 months later, winter. Snow fell from the sky and stained the black mountains in white. Facing the oncoming of dark, deep winter, I had a premonition that I was going to die soon. I haven't eaten anything in 3 days already. Moreover, with the snow covering the area, it didn't seem likely that there would be something edible around. The bountiful autumn mountains had changed, and in the winter the mountains became a land where the living died. But I would be fine. Dying wouldn't be bad. Since my sister's death and taking on being the sacrifice or atonement, I had been the same as dead. Right now, there were only 2 things I regretted. The first was that I wasn't able to say my complaints to God or whatever it was. The other was that I wanted to hear just once my sister's voice. That was it. But maybe that might be granted if I die. Imagining my sister's voice within my heart, it was a very bright and cute voice. With those gentle words in my ears, I quietly closed my eyes. While falling slowly to sleep, I wished that I would just never wake up. The next time I wake up, I think I would hate being in this world. Okay. How much fucking time has passed? Jesus. I'm like, what fucking like... Shit. Can you... Fuck it. Stop. 40 minutes. Okay, I'm done. It's too much reading. Too much fucking reading. This is the... What? Why do I have to... Okay, whatever.